Hey, do you like the Avengers? You want to learn how to grade comic books? Well, this is the video for you. Stick around, we're going to have some fun. Hey there, Bubby. Welcome to Shanghala. My name is Duke, and this is another daily grade video. We're going to be grading a nice big stack of Avengers comic books today. And once again, as I always say, because I like to be right up front, full disclosure, these are not my books. These are books that I'm grading for work. I'm not quite on the clock yet. A little warm-up, something I do before the workday starts, just for you, to have a little bit of fun looking at some old comic books and showing you how I grade books. These books will end up for sale on eBay under the .com Comics seller name. But you can also go to .comcomics.com. You can go to sellmycomicbooks.com on the web and see a little bit more about the company that I work for. Don't want to really oppress you with with any advertising, but again, I just want to let you know what these books are all about and what I'm doing here. I grade these books for the company, so if you do buy a book from us on eBay, and you don't like the grade, well, I'm the guy that you're mad at 9 times out of 10. But hey, let's have some fun. Please do like, share, subscribe, all the groovy things. You know how that works. This is a fairly new channel, and so any love you can give would certainly go a long way towards helping the YouTube algorithm kind of get hip to my existence. But hey, let's take a look. I'm going to go pretty quick with this because I'd like to get through this whole stack for you, and I don't really want this video to go more than 20 or 30 minutes. So let's start right off, and here we have Avengers number 16. What's the date on this? Probably 65. May 65. Look at that. Ding, 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 ding. And this is kind of what would become a regular trope of the Avengers, the semi-annual roster change. And so this would be the issue that would lead into what became lovingly known as Cap's Kooky Quartet, where the Avengers would pretty much be a foursome: Cap, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. But you can see all the other potentials there. I don't really love the Wasp costume. That's a crappy costume, Wasp. Yeah, but let's take a look here. So again, I pick up a book. I form kind of a instant assessment and then start narrowing it down. So I pick this up and I'm like, oh, that's very good. You know, you got all this stuff going on here, all of these multiple folds. So that's not going to be a fine at all. And you got some fairly heavy stressing right in the middle. The rest of it's not too bad. You got some blunting up here. Oops, I'll get it on camera where you can see it. But that's some heavy stressing. Look at the back. Back is decent. And again, you can see the more stressing here. So I'm kind of at a very good. That would be a 4.0. But let's take a look and just make sure there's nothing else here that's going to ding it up. And you can see here where the cover overlapped the interior of the book. And luckily it's not torn, but it is definitely folded over. Make sure nothing's cut out, nothing's missing. Always want to stop off and look at the centerfold. Double check page numbers just to make sure that is the true centerfold. Usually I've gotten to the point I've been grading books long enough that and collecting comic books for long enough, good Lord knows, I can usually tell just by feeling it whether or not it's missing any pages. But this one looks good, and I think I am going to give that, you know, I could almost go a 4.5 on this, which would be a very good plus. It's a fairly presentable book. The biggest problem, the biggest detraction is all these folds up here. And you do have kind of that there, and that there. So maybe I am back down to a 4. But it still has, you know, not a lot of gloss, but some. And it's a presentable book for sure. You know, if you put that in a CGC case, You know, that wouldn't be, you wouldn't be ashamed to have that on your wall. But I think just because of the multiple foldings here, I think I've got to give that a 4. I would really love to give it a 4 or 5, but can't quite do it. Red Guardian. This is a big book. This one has really taken off, and of course that's because the Red Guardian is appearing in a Black Widow movie, which should be out soon as I record this video. Don't still yet know if it's going to be in theaters or on Disney Plus or what they're going to do with it, but it's been delayed enough times. It's going to be coming out fairly soon. And the Red Guardian is, of course, prominent in that book, and this is his first appearance in the comics. I think he dies in this, too. Let's see. Let's see if we got any dead Guardian. Nope. Nope, I'm wrong. I misremembered. So this is some good art. Well, look at that. That's a fun page. I'm surprised some little kid didn't cut that out. So is this Buscema? It's looking very Buscema to me. John Buscema, meaning, you know, the artist. Inked by George Bell. John Buscema. Boom, boom, boom. Wicked smart. So the biggest problem with this book is this stressing right here. And that goes the whole vertical length of the book. So I would say somebody who read this, although they were fairly careful with it, because all of these edges are nice and tight, I would say they folded that cover back, you know, maybe wrapped it around as they were reading it. So you have that vertical line all through there and a couple of stresses here. So I don't think I can quite get that to a 5. Maybe I could, because the rest of the book is nice and tight. Nice and tight. I'm going to call that a 5. I'm going to call that a 5. Some people might even go to a 5.5, but to me, this is just too much. It's got to have some very goodness attached to it. It's not quite a pure fine, even a fine minus. A bit of a color rub up there. So I'm going to call that a 5. So a 5.0 appearance, first appearance of the Red Guardian. What do you think that's going to go for on eBay? I bet you, put my microphone back on, I bet you that'll be a $50, $60 book. What do you think? So here we go, and this one is tricky. Avengers number 83. You will often see this listed as first appearance of Valkyrie. Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's the first appearance of this look, but the character is actually the Enchantress disguised as Valkyrie. And so Valkyrie actually first appeared as herself, I believe, in Defenders number 4. So it's very similar to, and I forget the characters' names because I wasn't really reading the book then, but in X-Force, Domino is somebody else when she first appears. It's somebody in disguise as Domino. And then a few issues later, then it's true Domino. So this is listed sometimes as first Valkyrie. Well, it's the first character that looks like Valkyrie. And the funny thing is that Valkyrie, you know, in the comics, in Defenders 4, she takes over the body of an Earth woman. So it's kind of funny that here, before she's done that, she looks like she's going to look in that body. Anyway, the Lady Liberators. Here's some Woman's Lib for you. And this is a nice looking book. Really. What do we got going on? Well, we got a fold here, and this top corner is a little blunted. You got a little kind of a chip there, blunting here. But there, of course, it helps that the spine, that the cover is kind of wrapped a little far to the right, so you don't have any color here to flake. There are some bends there, but not really any tears, and they're a little harder to see. Makes the book more presentable because they are white rather than being a color. You got some wrinkling and some bending here. See how the inside looks. Take a look at that artwork if you want. Soak that up. There was a period when Marvel did this. The centerfold would just have half a page of art on each page. See that? And ads across the bottom. A couple of years ago, they tried that. I think DC tried that with a Snickers ad, and the fans just went absolutely ballistic. Oh, a love light. You gotta have a love light. I think it's a lava lamp. So anyway, there she is. There's kind of her first appearance. That's a nice drawing of the Wasp, frankly. And I always loved Buscema's Scarlet Witch. She's very, very voluptuous. So I'm going to call that. So the question is, can I call that a 7 or should it be a 6.5? I think it has to be a 6.5 because even though it's hard to pick up, these bends here and that bending there and all along the top and the back cover. So it's probably a little bit much for a 7 for it to be, a fine, very fine, but it's definitely a fine plus, I think. So I'm calling that a 6.5. And of course, I always invite you to leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the grades. Do you disagree? Or do you just want to take me to task for any comments I've made? Right or wrong? All right. So let's start picking up speed here because there's one thing I want to show you here towards the end. One of the books at the bottom of this pile. So this one's going to be more to a 6. It looks kind of good to begin with, but this top corner is not just blunted, it's actually crushed a little bit. You've got color rubbing all along the edge there and a little bit of a abrasion right there. And this bottom corner is kind of blunted and crushed a little bit as well. And you have a bend there. See, and that's bad enough. Now I'm almost wondering if it should be a 5.5 and not a 6. Is it a fine or a fine minus? Well, let's look inside and see what's going on. The page quality is quite nice. So that's a plus. Here we are again with the half pages on the centerfold. So, yeah, I think, see, that crushing goes all the way through. So I think it's going to make this a 5.5 rather than a 6. And I hope I had that on camera so you could see it. Let's do it again just in case. But see how that crushing is kind of, it goes the whole book. It's not just the cover. See there in the back. So otherwise, it's a pretty presentable copy. But I'm going to call it a 5.5. And this one you probably are not going to be able to see it, but there's some moisture damage here, and probably what you can see is the rust on that bottom staple. You got a fold here and blunting along there and there. So just for the spine stressing and that blunting, we would probably be down to a 5. With the moisture wrinkling and the, well, I don't know how much that's rust or just a really dark patina. It's smooth, that staple. I can feel with my fingernail. So I was going to do I go down to a 4 or a 4.5? I think I'm at a 4.5 because that staple is not as bad on the rust as I initially thought. He got killed at some point because this is the Squadron Sinister, or what I would later know as the Squadron Supreme, and this kind of Hawkman analog. He wasn't part of the team when I started reading it. So I think he got offed at some point. Boom, 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 boom. I can't remember his name, if he was American Eagle or what he was. Spidey. Did you see Spidey? Look at that. Spider-Man. Yeah, so I'm going to go 4-5 on that. And if you don't like it, it's just too bad. Let's go. Let's pick up the pace. This one's a nice book. This is going to be a 7, maybe a 6. Can we get it to a 7.5? What do we got here? A little blunting, a little blunting, a little ding, a little blunting, not bad. A little blunting. A little bend there. Probably got dropped. Not much going on for spine stress. That's good. Real nice cover gloss. You might almost think that was a new book. Just almost. I'm going to go 7. You can see how this is all kind of blunted and then folded. I hope you can see it. Probably be better if I could hold it where you could see it, but that top edge is all kind of folded where the cover overlapped. But let's look inside real quick. Everything's tight and that's all good. So I'm going to call that a 7. That's a 7. And a 7 is a fine, very fine. Now here's a book. So what do you think? With the death of Chadwick Boseman, are these Black Panther books going to like take off? You think they would have when the movie came out. It would be kind of sad, almost to the point of repulsive, if they took off now. But this is the origin of T'Challa. This one's not quite as nice as the last book, but it still might still be in the 7 range because there are not many stresses along the corner. 2 or 3 or 4. A little bit of blunting there and there. The cover doesn't have quite as much gloss. Got some soiling along the back though. And the same thing with a little bit of folding there. And see, I gotta be careful to make sure you can actually see it. That looked very Kirby-ish, didn't it? Where'd it go? There it is. That guy had a very Kirby mouth. Kirby eyes. But I don't think Kirby drew that. Who drew it? Somebody trying to draw like Kirby. Frank Giacoia? How do you pronounce that? Giacoia. I've read that name all my life, and I have no idea how to actually pronounce it. So I'm going to need your help with that. And Sal Buscema. I can say Buscema. So I think that one, this is going to be a 6.5, largely because of the soiling here in the back. Otherwise, it would, it would be a 7. It's not quite as nice as our last 7, but the last 7 was super nice and had some defects. This one is just general wear. But again, it's a 6.5. Here's the Hulk coming in to save the day. Issue number 88. We've got a bend there, some dings. And some wrinkling here. I was just based on the front cover. I was close to calling this a 7.5. But when you get to the back, you can see you've got some not really tearing or stressing, but you've got some wrinkling right in there. Don't really love that. Everything, though, is complete. Centerfold looks good. So, to me, that's going to be a 7. Just because of this kind of wrinkling there. And you do have some blunting there. Somebody might call that a 7.5, but I think I need to call it a 7. Try to err a little bit on the side of making sure people are not too upset when they get a book, because people will argue, by golly. I mean, I've had a book I call a 4 and somebody sends it back and says it's not, that's a 1.8. So that's what happens. It's a very, very subjective art. And this one's looking kind of, well, yeah, still maybe, might be a 6.5. I was going to say 7, but you've got a bend here. Spine's okay, not much for stressing, but you've got a bend there, blunting there, and then some blunting along this corner. So all the corners are kind of dinged up a little bit. Oh, and you do have some actual stressing here. Look at those. Can you see those? And because there's a little bit of, I don't want to say grime, but soiling here, those show up pretty good. That knocked that down from a 7 to a 6 because you've got several stress lines there that actually show up. And, you know, on the white, it can sometimes be hard to see them, but centerfold looks good. So I'm going to call that a 6. And here is Avengers number 90. And again, you get some stressing there. Cover doesn't sit quite right. Stressing there and there. I think we're detached. I think that cover is detached. Let's look. Yes, it is. See that? So, what do you knock off for one staple being detached? I have a hard job getting above a 5 with a staple detached. Now, this is otherwise a pretty good looking book. You know, it might be a 5, or maybe not quite a 5.5, because you've got a lot of bending here along this edge where obviously, you know, somebody held the book as they were reading it and maybe held it a little too tightly, a little too much love. But the cover being detached is going to knock off at least a half a grade and maybe more. I don't think that's going to knock this one all the way down to a 4, but that's at least a 4.5 because of that staple. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So again, I don't want this video to be too long. I'm going to skip ahead at this point because here's what I wanted to show you. Well, apart from the first, this being the first appearance of Hellcat, Patsy Walker as Hellcat. Patsy Walker, of course, predates everybody else in the Marvel Universe. She had been appearing in Marvel Comics since the late 40s, anyway. But because I already knew, because there was a sticker on the bag this was originally in, and whenever you see a 25-cent cover price, sometimes a 20, sometimes a 30, but definitely the 25s, you want to look inside and be very careful. There it is. See it? Somebody has cut out the Marvel value stamp. Now, I don't know why people did that. It never even would have occurred to me to do that. It was just something that was printed there. I don't know why people cut them out and collected them. I don't recall that you could send those in for anything, so it's not like, you know, box tops or anything like that. I don't know what possessed people to cut those out. You tell me if you know why people actually did that. But anyway, so what do you do with a book like this? Well, it's in a pretty decent grade. So here's kind of my general theory. If it's a 7 or more, if, you know, without that being cut out, I'll do it as a qualified grade. If it's kind of beat up anyway, I just sort of incorporate it into the grade. So if this was a 4, you know, otherwise, I might call it a 3.5, you know, especially where that stamp is not on a story page, does not affect the story. You know, if it was a 4, I might call it a 3.5 in the notation of the stamp being cut out. This book is probably, it's not quite a 7. It's probably a 6 because you've got the blunting here and some stressing here. And some stressing there. And that whole back is blunt. Actually, it's probably closer to a 5. 5 maybe. It's not bad enough for a 5, but you can see that whole corner got folded at some point. So yeah, probably, oh, and there she is. There's her first appearance as Hellcat. Boom, boom. What do you think of that? Yeah, so if it had been like a 7.5 or a 7, I would have done it as a qualified grade. Qualified with a notation, that, fairly high grade other than this one big defect. But this being probably a 5.5, I'll just incorporate it into the grade and I'll call it a 5. Still note it, of course, that the stamp is cut out, but I won't do a qualified grade. It's just another defect. Is how I treat that. How do you treat it? What do you do? What do you cut off, or what do you demerit a book as far as points on the grade for the Marvel value stamp being cut out? But like I said, I'm going to call that a 5 and MVS cut. So that is what I wanted to show you. Although let's just take a look at these giant size books too, as long as we're here. Boy, this one's kind of rough. This has got some pages. Oh, grody. Well, that's not really a good example, just because it's so rough. But what I wanted to show you is the spines of these square-bound books, and it's a really tough call on the grading, because a lot of times you can tell, as with this book, it's fairly clear to me that this is not crushed from handling, but you can see it's not square-bound. That probably came off the press like that. It's not quite as square-bound as it's supposed to be. Because if it got pressed down like that, then you would expect to see some tearing here of some kind, and you really don't. Although you do have kind of a fold along here, and you've got, well, maybe it was crushed, because you can see the different coloring. Where it's kind of soiled here, where it probably laid flat, and that was probably not flat to the bottom at one time like it is now. So maybe it did get crushed at some point. But anyway, these square bounds, the giants and that kind of thing, it can be really tough to tell, okay, well, did it come off the press like that? Is that how it looked on the newsstand? Or did it get crushed in handling? So is it a defect or not? Because generally speaking, printing and binding defects don't factor heavily into the grade. I mean, a little bit. A book with defects like, bindery tears or Marvel chipping or something like that, it's less desirable than a book without those defects. But again, the book was sold brand new like that, so it's not any kind of a handling defect. It's not damage. That's how the book was sold new. So again, those square bounds can be kind of tough. So you tell me in the comments below, how do you treat a square bound book when it's damaged? I mean, if you've got a beautiful book that has otherwise got kind of a crushed spine, and you can kind of tell from everything else that that's just how the book was new, that it hasn't been crushed or mangled from handling, how do you treat it? Do you knock off anything on the grade? And if so, how much? It's a tough call. It really is. But anyway, that's the grading video this time out. Thank you very much for watching. There'll be more to come. And until then, goodbye, good luck, and please be good to each other.